Hello, welcome to Click the Startup, an entrepreneurial video series where we invite subject matter mentors to answer our most frequently asked questions from startup founders and small business owners via quick and easy how-to videos. I'm Destin Artigo, Director of Opportunity Machine, Lafayette Center for Entrepreneurs. If you would like to submit a question on an entrepreneurial topic to be answered in an upcoming video, please email us at hello@opportunitymachine.org. Our speaker for today is Brad Pitko, Director of Marketing for golfballs.com, here to discuss best practices for email marketing.
Thank you, Destin. I'm excited to share some of the best practices that I've learned over the years as in my role as Director of Marketing at golfballs.com and can hopefully help your small business. So before we kind of get into the best practices themselves, I do have a handful of just general tips that I think would be very helpful that you should keep in mind, and as far as tips of successful email marketing. So real quick from a top level, we definitely want to get their permission whenever you're building your email subscriber list. And what I mean by that is try to avoid bulk buying of an email list, or try to avoid those email lists that may come across your inbox where you're sure that they did not opt into your email marketing program. That's kind of cardinal rule number one, because the internet service providers, and I'll be saying that a lot over the course of this presentation, I'll call them ISPs. That's like Google or Yahoo or Hotmail. They'll typically are very keen on email addresses that you did not receive permission to send to, and that will definitely hurt your health overall, and it'll be very difficult for you to reach inboxes as you kind of get your email marketing program in gear. In addition to kind of getting their permission first, you definitely want to keep your list clean. What I mean by that is if people are unsubscribing or request to unsubscribe, you absolutely have to get those out of your email database. In fact, it's a CAN-SPAM law for you to do that and respect that. So you want to make sure you're keeping it clean. By keeping it clean, I'm also referring to those email addresses that may not have opened in a while. And that's kind of a list segmentation, which we'll get into a little bit later. But in theory, you'd like to kind of move your active addresses that open your emails, that click on your emails, that engage with you, and maybe bucket those in a different area. So that way, maybe you send to those a little more frequently, and then you're also keeping your list clean because you're not trying to muddy up your segments with those that may not engage with you. So really, just making sure you're calling out those unsubscribes. And making sure you kind of have it segmented in the right way. Tracking performance is everything. I'm going to mention the word testing quite a lot in this presentation as well, but you can't test unless you track the performance. Most of the email marketing services that you guys use are going to have everything from open rates to click-through rates to conversions and things like that. You definitely want to track those metrics to make sure that you're sending the right way and making sure you're improving with each campaign. Personalization is a big part of golfballs.com. So we also try to personalize in our email marketing campaigns when we can. I'll get into that just a little bit later. Engaging creative is something that is paramount. If they open your email that you send, you have to have engaging creative for them to click through. Otherwise, it's hitting their inbox, they're deleting it, or if it's not engaging, they may be unsubscribing. So you definitely need to work on making the creative as powerful as possible. Finding your frequency is really important, and that may change depending on the industry you're in. I'll get into that a little bit later as well. Segmenting your list is what I kind of referred to earlier, with kind of bucketing your email database into different cohorts that you can hit with different offers, or maybe hit with a different frequency, just to kind of keep everything clean and keep everything organized. Analyzing past campaigns is super important to know what worked, know what didn't work, and know how to kind of move forward. Crafting good subject lines is kind of the A1 most important thing I would recommend, because if you can't craft a good subject line, your customer is not going to open your email. They'll never even see your creative. They're certainly not going to click through. They're certainly not going to buy. So subject lines are really important when organizing a really good email marketing program, and using partners to improve reach, which is something that we do very much over here at golfballs.com. So for instance, you have your email database that you've acquired through your own efforts, but you should try to reach out to other partners, maybe other manufacturers in your industry, but other partners that may have a database that you don't have, and you can use them to help get your word out. You can compensate them maybe a commission on a sale, or sometimes you can compensate them on maybe them sending an email for a dollar amount. But we use partners all the time just to help extend our reach when we have great offers. So those are kind of the overall arching tips. And I'm going to touch on a lot of these while I'm discussing the best practices, which we'll get into right now. So the main 6 best practices that I would recommend from a successful email marketing program are these: building a subscriber list, keeping your emails out of spam folders, increasing open and click-through rates, super important, improving subject lines, which are referred to as, in my opinion, one of the most important things, retargeting using email lists, and tracking and making data-driven decisions, which is what I refer to as far as looking at those click-through rates, looking at those open rates, looking at those conversions, so that you can make those decisions, so that each email that you send out is improved and better than the last one. So the first thing we're going to get into is building a subscriber list. This may be very hard for you. So if you sit down and say, I have X amount of people in my email database, I really like to ramp that up. How do you go about doing that? Well, we run sweepstakes quite a bit, and I think people don't think of that as a way to build a quality list. However, I would very much argue that point. So almost at any point during the year, we have some sort of offer. And this may seem like a lot. Win free golf balls for a year. Wow, right? That seems like that is an impressive thing. That's a lot they're giving up. It really doesn't cost us a whole lot of money. And we can get thousands of email addresses from this, especially when it's shared via social media and it's on our website. So all that money we're spending in maybe our pay-per-click channels or on Google or TV or wherever, if we're driving traffic to our website, we can throw a sweepstakes up there, some kind of email acquisition form up there to try. So at least if they don't buy or they don't fill out our form, at least we're getting their email address, which is something you're going to want to do. I mean, you always have to be building your email database, because every time you hit send on an email campaign, you're going to experience attrition. There's going to be people that unsubscribe. So you always have to be adding new and fresh emails all the time to just curb that attrition rate. And so we typically, we're very creative with our sweepstakes. We work with our partners as well. So we may work with a Bridgestone, for instance, to try to give some gear or some golf balls or even a talent. So we had a sweepstakes last year. We had a win a free lesson with Tiger Woods. And so we were able to use our manufacturers to give us either products or talents or services that we can offer to our database for free. And really, they're happy to do it, because every single time you're promoting the sweepstakes, they get their name out there too. So that's an easy way to do it. The bottom part of this slide shows just a sign up for updates. At a very, very minimum, you should have a sign up box either on your home page or ideally on your footer of your website that's apparent on every page. Really in your email template footer, in your website template footer, have a sign up for updates. That way, if there's someone who comes to your website, there's always a page that they're on that they can at least enter their email address for more information. Keeping emails out of spam folders. So that's a big challenge that I hear from those that are have an aggressive email marketing campaign. They spend a lot of money on their email partner. They spend a lot of money on trying to get email addresses. They hit that send button and they notice that a lot of their emails are not entering the customers' inboxes. So I have the first slide here is what not to do, and then we have another one on kind of what to do. So what you don't want to do is send too often for your audience or your industry. At golfballs.com, we send emails every single day, but we're a retailer, e-commerce, and golf is kind of an affinity group, and they don't really mind receiving golf stuff. Golfers love to receive golf stuff. You may be in an industry in which that's very similar to what you experience, or you may be in a services industry that, once a day is just way too much. Once a week might be too much. So you have to really send and really gauge the response and find out how often you can kind of get away with, because you don't want to be too passive with it. You do want to keep your brand top of mind, but you don't want to send too frequent. You definitely don't want to send without removing inactive addresses. And what I mean by that is inactive could be those that unsubscribed or those that haven't opened an email in a long time. So those that haven't opened an email, set them aside. you can keep sending to those folks that are opening and clicking. And then maybe every third campaign or every fourth campaign, you can try to send to those inactive addresses to try to re-engage them, because maybe the offers just weren't quite there, or maybe it's an inactive mailbox. And so you don't want to keep sending to inactive addresses, because over time, they'll start to damage your sending reputation. Giving customers a reason to complain. What do I mean by that? Irrelevant offers, or too frequent offers, or people that said unsubscribed and you're still sending to them. Take away any barrier, or don't have any customers reasons to complain. What I mean by that is, within every ISP, like a Gmail, there's a complain button. And when customers start hitting that complain button, it starts damaging your reputation, and you really start missing inboxes. Failing to set up your sending account properly. You really need to rely on your email marketing service for that. They typically have the fields you'll need. When I say fields, I mean like subject line, typically a pre-header, typically a from address. And there's other fields that you really need to fill out, because those ISPs look for senders that are following the proper protocol in sending out their messages. And if you don't do that right, then they'll kind of say this email marketer doesn't really know what they're doing, and another reason not to hit an inbox. And then failing to keep tabs on your sending health. I'm not going to get into too much detail with this because it can get kind of technical, but two services, SenderScore and Google Postmaster Tools, those are two services that you can that are free, that you can look at and kind of gauge your sending health. They'll kind of tell you if you have a lot of bad addresses, or if maybe you're being blocked, or if maybe they're seeing a lot of complaints on your account. So you can, Google Postmaster Tools is a little bit easier to set up and easier to kind of understand. So why don't you take a look at those, and it's just a way for you to kind of gauge your health and make sure you're on the right track. So these are things not to do. What you should do, and they kind of coincide with the former slide, is find your frequency. Really understand when your customers are expecting to receive those emails, how often is okay, and try to stick to that. If for whatever reason you try a Monday afternoon, and then maybe you try a Wednesday morning, and if you find that Wednesday morning really works well, maybe you keep Wednesday morning to kind of establish some sort of cadence with your customers, because oftentimes I subscribe to email newsletters where I kind of know when it's coming up, and I'm looking forward to that email from my from that service that I'm interested in. So once you find your frequency, consider sticking to it, but testing as well, just to say maybe there's a better day, or maybe things have changed and times have changed. So keeping your list clean, of course, that's what you definitely want to do. And I think by segmenting that out, segmenting your list is the easiest way to do that. If you send to your entire list every single time, all the time, it's going to be really hard to understand what's working and what's not. And you really don't want to keep a highly converting email address in the same bucket and in the same view as someone who's never, ever opened an email from you, because you may want to send more frequently to those active addresses and less frequently to those inactive addresses. Providing easy unsubscribe options. None of us want an email address to unsubscribe or a customer to unsubscribe, but it happens. And if you do not provide an easy way to do that, and you do not respect that unsubscribe request, you'll find yourself in big trouble with the ISPs. You'll find yourself potentially blocked. It's not worth the risk of 1 or 2 or 3 trying to keep them subscribed. You absolutely need to respect that. There's other email addresses out there. If you build your list the right way, you can account and curb that attrition problem that you might be having. Populating the from field, that's what I spoke about earlier as far as setting your email up correctly. You definitely want to fill all those necessary fields out so that when the ISP receives the information from you, they know who it's from, they know the subject line is, they know what the other items of the email is, they know that the creative is in there, that it's formulated properly, and that gives them no reason not to deliver that to the email recipient. And then monitoring your account health, like I mentioned before, with the Google Postmaster Tools and SenderScore are 2 that we use that are pretty easy to use and give us a lot of insight. So increasing open rates. Open rates is something that's really tied to your subject line. So you might say, what is an open rate? Open rate is really total unique opens divided by your total recipients. So how many unique people are opening your email, kind of divided by who's in your email list. So you really want to keep your list clean. I keep mentioning that. I can't harp on that enough to avoid spam folders. That's an easy way to increase your open rate, because every time you hit send, you're sending to a clean list. You want to develop compelling subject lines. And I'll speak on that a little bit more to come. I'll share some good subject lines, some bad subject lines, kind of some tips and tricks on how to handle that. Send only when you have something to say. So this really goes back to finding your frequency. But you don't, if for instance, you're sending on Wednesday afternoons or Wednesday mornings, you don't really have anything new to offer, you may want to consider giving your list a break every now and then. We're more on the aggressive side. So I would say that if you feel like you want to keep your brand top of mind, no problem. But try not to send the same message you sent last week and the week before. You should have something unique to say about your business each week, and it should be something different. And so just keep that in mind, not to just hit send because it's Wednesday morning and I know I'm supposed to hit send on Wednesday morning, and not think about a compelling subject, a compelling creative, and a compelling offer. Send on the right day at the right time. Not ideal to send on a Saturday night at 8 p.m. when your customer base is hunkering down on movie night, right? So make sure you're sending whenever you think that your customers will be in the right state of mind, whether it's during the business day or maybe whether it's in the evening, but just send it the right day and at the right time to get the best open rates. Segmenting your list into different buckets, very similar to keeping your list clean, but just trying to keep those different buckets active, moderately active, inactive, high purchasers, which you could also segment your list into might be those that purchase high ticket items versus low ticket items. If you're selling a product or service that's $900, and then you have a customer that when you look into their records, they've never purchased anything over $80. They're probably not going to purchase something that's $900. Maybe you send it to them at the bottom of one of their emails just to kind of engage them, but it wouldn't be a bright idea to send a dedicated email for this $900 service or product when this customer has never ever purchased anything over $80 before. So think about it like that too. I mean, the more that you can segment, the better. There may be some offers that everyone gets it, and that's fine. You can just check those buckets and send it to everybody. But there might be a week where nothing crazy is going on, but you really want to harp that mid-level, mid-ticket item, so you only send to those folks. And so it's just a different way to kind of engage your audience and keep the relevancy with your customers. Including pre-headers and optimize for mobile devices. So mobile devices are big these days. You definitely want to test your content that it looks great on mobile devices. I'll share some services that can help with that a little bit later in the presentation. Pre-headers are important as well, because as you're looking at your Gmail inbox, for instance, you usually have the large subject line that you notice. There's usually like a small line that gives a little bit more context as to what the email is. If you open it, that's called the pre-header. It's always a good idea to include that in there, so the customer gives the customer one more, warm and fuzzy that yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and open this because I think it's something that that I might like to see. And then test. You cannot increase your open rates without testing different things, testing different subject lines, testing different pre-headers, testing different times of day. But you always need to be testing at any given time, not only your email programs, but really on your website as well, with creatives and anything that warrants such. So increasing click-through rates, pretty similar to open rates, but the click-through rate as a definition is your total unique clicks divided by your total unique opens. So basically you're looking at all the clicks divided by all the opens, and that gives you your click-through rate. And so you'll be able to view that. I mean, every email service provider is going to show you your list size. They're going to show your total opens, unique opens, your open rate, total clicks, unique clicks, click-through rate. So that's pretty standard as far as metrics are concerned. And you really want to monitor that, because you might have one campaign that has a killer click-through rate. The next campaign is a dog. And so you kind of look at them and say, well, what's the difference here? Oh, we had this call to action, or oh, we feature this creative. And so you definitely want to look at those and manage those click-through rates to be as high as possible. Compelling creative is super important. Making sure that it's easy to digest. It's not overly in your face. It's not bright colors and just crazy things coming at you. It needs to be very clear, very concise, and very engaging for a customer to click through. Call to actions for us are everything. Clear call to actions. And have them above the fold. What I mean by above the fold is if you open an email, what you see right then and there without scrolling, that would be above the fold. So you don't want to have an offer in which you have all this stuff about the features and the benefits of the offer, and then all the customer has to scroll and scroll and scroll to get to a button that says order now, or request a free quote, or shop now, or learn more. You want to have those call to actions really multiple times throughout that email. So no matter where they are in the email, they see different buttons and different calls to actions to do that. And you may send an email where one is a shop now and the next creative block is a request a free quote. We do that all the time with our business to business audience. And so just make sure those call to actions are correct and they match that creative, and make sure they're very clear for the customer to engage. Customizing the message if you have the data. So what I mean by that is we're big on customization at golfballs.com. So we'll work in a customer's name into the email message, whether it's in a text-based form at the top of the message, or whether we've actually worked it into the actual email creative as well, which I'll share with you as we get a little further down the presentation. But it just kind of gives the customer that warm and fuzzy feel, and that, okay, this company knows who I am, not just this number in their database. They get me. Sending relevant message to the appropriate audiences. Same thing as far as segmenting out, and I'll go back to that example about the $800 versus the $80. So you really want to make sure that the right message are going to the right part of your email database, just to make sure you're capitalizing on those click-through rates. And then creating a sense of urgency. Really, whether there's a sense of urgency or not, you can create one by order now, request a free quote now. Even if you want to artificially, I want to say artificially, but put in time limits to offers, like 1 week only or limited time. You can run those above board and take it out for a couple days and then run it again in a few days. And it's correct, but sense of urgency has shown to increase not only click-through rates on email campaigns, but also open rates as well by including urgency in the subject line. So try to think of ways that you can, in addition to clear call to actions, really give that customer a reason to click, because they have a fear of losing out if they don't. And then testing as well, just like we talked about with the open rates. So similar to this, similar to what we did in the past, we'll do a kind of what not to do and what to do on subject lines, because we typically hear a lot about how do I write a good subject line, or what's the best subject line to write for open. So what you don't want to do is what you want to do is avoid overly long subjects. Like we don't want to have subjects go on and on and on and on, because most of the time the ISPs are going to cut it off at some point anyway, and it's just too much to digest. Like you just want your customer to get to the point straight away. What is it? Have your email creative kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what you're trying to offer. All you're trying to do with a subject line is simply get the customer to open the email. That's it. That's basically it. Once you get into the email creative, then you can talk about that. You want to avoid excessive punctuation and caps. So an exclamation point I use almost every time we send an email campaign out. That's okay. Having a question mark, that's okay. But what you don't want is some sort of urgency language and then 5 exclamation points or pound signs or all that stuff. After a while, it starts to wear down the ISPs. It starts looking like spam, and you're going to have a hard time reaching inboxes. You don't want to have subject lines as well with capitalizations or missing grammatical errors as well. Try to capitalize it like a title, like you would a title, where important words get their own capital letter, but don't have the entire subject line caps. That just doesn't look good. It's hard to read for the customer. and it's not good for sending health and ISP reputation. Overusing personalization, that can get kind of creepy. We've seen it before. If we know your name, that's fine. Maybe we'll throw it into one campaign, but don't throw it into every single campaign. Try to spread it out a little bit. It's really risky using a personalization in a subject line. I would recommend you use it in the email body, just because if it's easy to make a mistake, and if you do, it looks really bad in a subject line when there's a, instead of saying Brad, it says enter name here, or if your database is off by one line and it shows the next customer's name. It looks really bad if I'm not opening an email, and if I'm opening an email and it's not my name. It's hard to recommend. And then misspelling. The last thing you want to do is misspell anything in a subject line. No one's going to open at that point. They're going to think you're hokey, and it's just not going to work. What you do want to do, though, is mention key information at the front of the email. Present your offer clearly and create a sense of urgency. Try to do all that stuff as close to the front as possible, so that if it does get cut off via, let's say someone's looking at it on their phone, or someone's looking at it on a condensed window, they can see everything they need to see for them to click or open the email up front. And I'll give you some examples of kind of some subject lines, both good and bad. So the top two subject lines are ones that we've used with success in the past. You'll see the very first one, final days, exclamation point. So creating sense of urgency off the bat. This offer of the TaylorMade golf balls will be ending very, very soon. So we're saying final days, urgency. Very next thing, buy 3, get 1 free, offer. And then on TaylorMade TP5 golf balls. So that's the brand. So it's a very prominent brand. Right before that is the offer on that prominent brand, and then a sense of urgency on everything. And then we also offer free personalization. So we're kind of adding that extra nugget in that if they get to the end of it, it's a no-brainer for me to open this email. If I'm in the market for some TaylorMade golf balls, this would be a very good email to open. The Bridgestone E6 golf balls now 2 for $30. So that right there with the limited time offer on the end, again, urgency there, nice offer, pretty concise, pretty short. The next one I go to, I think, is an opportunity machine subject line that I feel like is perfect for kind of business to business service-based companies. Hacks and pivots, keep your business going. Super simple. If you're subscribed to the OM, like, this is an email that I want to open because it's going to give me some tips and tricks on how to improve my business. Straight to the point. What do you have to say about this? The bottom half of this are ones that get a little tricky. So I got an email recently from this company called 3Kit. Their email subject line was 3Kit newsletter. I have no idea what this newsletter is about. Doesn't mention anything, doesn't say anything about an offer, relevancy, nothing. I went ahead and immediately deleted this email. I'm not going to open it because it's not telling me anything about it. The second one, wall art clearance. This one bugs me for the reason of the capitalization that I referred to earlier. Honestly, I'm struggling to believe how this even got into my inbox. This seems right for the ISPs to mark as spam. It has this errant period at the end as well that I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's not a sentence, so it just doesn't make sense, and it's kind of screaming at me. Something I wouldn't recommend. What you might have seen recently would be this 25% off starts now subject line, something very similar to this, with those symbols. Not quite emojis, but they have symbols, and when done well, it can really stand out in an email inbox. And really, that's the ultimate goal of all email marketers, is to kind of stand out. But it's super risky because not all ISPs know how to translate those symbols. And so when you don't get it right, you get something like the last one with the 4 question marks, sweet, sweet sunshine savings on everything. Outside of those question marks, I wouldn't have a problem, I guess, with that email. It's not incredibly compelling, but it looks like they tried to put some sort of symbol or emoji of sorts, and the system had no idea. Either they put it in wrong, or my Outlook didn't know how to handle it, and it inserts these question marks, like fail. I'm never going to open this email. It looks really bad. I just don't think the risk versus reward on including those symbols is really there. I think if you have a really great subject line, I think it's probably going to do well without those stars. I mean, 25% off starts now. I'd click that regardless of those stars. So it's just it's risky. I don't mind, you know, I wouldn't say don't ever do it, but you really need to test really hard with that to make sure you're getting it 100% correct. So one of the best practices that I referred to early in the presentation was retargeting using email lists. For those that are kind of unfamiliar with retargeting, it's basically, and this is more popular with website retargeting, but you can do it in your email lists as well. You're identifying a customer that you have or someone that's visited your website, or in this case has opened an email from you, and you can basically retarget to them throughout the web. You really need to work with a retargeting company though, or a Google AdWords, or have a Google AdWords account to kind of get the necessary code. But what you can do is place a line of code in your email signature or your HTML body of your email. And once that code is in there, it kind of tags that customer to your company. And then you can then tag that to your ads that are across the internet, and you can retarget to them with some of your offerings. And so it is something that is kind of new. It's been around on the website side for a long time, but it is relatively new on the email marketing side. I think it's really engaging. And if you already have a relationship with the retargeting company, or you already have a Google AdWords account, it's worth asking your rep about that, to throw that in there, because it's just another way for you to stay relevant with your customers and to kind of reach them in different areas of their behavior and their shopping, no matter where they are on the web. There are many retargeting companies out there. We use a company called Criteo. They do come recommended. Some of them have their, just like anything else, they have their pros and cons, but just do your research if you'd like to get going with a retargeting company. And I do recommend them if it's within your budget. So tracking and data-driven decisions are super important. We kind of talked about all the different things that are important, like subject line and open rates and click-through rates. So you need to make sure you're viewing those statistics and those metrics all the time, especially as you're preparing your next email campaign, to know what worked, what didn't work, what can I improve on. But your sending software or your email service provider should be able to give you all of that data. If you have a Google Analytics account, you can also tag that data in there, and you can, if you're familiar with Google Analytics, you can slice it up much better than you could with any sort of email service provider. So what you can do is put different times of day on there. You can put you can see how long they're visiting your site. You can do all kind of things. So if you do have a Google Analytics account, I would recommend you get your email data in there, and and they should be able to help you out with kind of connecting those two together. But you definitely want to measure your unique opens and open rate, your unique clicks and click-through rate, conversions, your revenue if applicable, and conversions might be not necessarily for us. It's purchases, because we're an e-commerce site. But it might be contact us forms. It might be request a free quote. It could be a number of things. And we have different conversions based on different initiatives that we have. For the most part, we're looking at revenue because we're an e-commerce site, but that could mean a lot of different things. And you definitely want to measure your unsubscribes. Just to understand, you might find a pattern with most of your unsubscribes coming from one particular offer, or maybe one particular time of the day. If you test something out and you send on a Monday morning, that might not be the best time to send. You may get a ton of unsubscribes because someone's coming in the office for the first time this week, and they're seeing something that's not relevant. They got a lot of stuff on their plate, and they're just unsubscribing from everything that's not relevant at that time. So you need to look at that to know when you want to kind of start sending and have better sending times, and then again testing from those different metrics. So just a handful of different approaches from an email marketing perspective. You do want to mix it up a little bit. This is what we would call an offer-driven approach. So very plain and simple, very clear, hard to miss, clear call to action, clear offer. So just a straight up offer-driven approach. These are typically work very, very well for us. Here's a personalized approach where I mentioned that sometimes we throw in a customer's name into the email creative. So this particular instance, we're throwing that person's name into that first line of the golf ball, so we can kind of explain to them, hey, this is what your golf ball could look like, with your name on there. If you have that technology or that ability, it is worth doing from time to time. We'll maybe do 1 or 2 of these a month. So I wouldn't overuse it, because I do think it gets a little bit creepy if every single time you're sending. Now, if you're sending once a week, and you have a service-based business where you really personal touch with the customer, and you want to lead every email out with the customer's name, I think that's perfectly fine. But if you send more frequently, just kind of use it sparingly if you do have that information. But it is worth using. It's definitely worth testing. Here's a deal approach that I think a lot of retailers have kind of missed out on, and the ones that I see do it, I think do really well. If you're retail, you probably have bundle packs that you can make with maybe old inventory, or you can do this with products and services as well. But we kind of took some products that we had throughout the warehouse or different things. We asked our manufacturer if they had any maybe older product that they could get rid of for relatively inexpensively. And we put it together with this massive perceived value and this retail price. And so we've done pretty well with these kind of deal approaches. Again, I think you can do it with products and services if you throw in enough kind of extra things that just say, customer says, you know what, I wasn't really interested in the market right now, but this deal is just too much to pass up. So we have had success with offers like this as well. And we do piggyback off of our manufacturers a lot. If you don't leverage your manufacturers, if you have a retail-based business, you really should, because they should be giving you promotions. If not, they can create, whether they're industry-wide or not, they can make promotions for you. But this is an example of an offer that Bridgestone came to us with, and this was an industry-wide promotion, so all of our competitors had it, but it's buy 3 dozen, get 1 free. Very simple, very straightforward. We're not burdened with having to come up with all of these deals. We just kind of taking what the manufacturer has given us, and we're making it very clean, very easy for the customer to read, kind of hard to pass up. But lean on those manufacturers for promotions that, because sometimes they'll help kind of fill out your promotional calendar during the dry times of the year. This is a product kind of based approach. Also, you can do this with one-to-ones as well, as far as throwing in what the customer browsed or what they clicked on. But this is an example of actually throwing products inside of the email template. So it's not just this one big creative. We have this creative piece, which you can see up towards the top in green. But we actually throw products in there too, to kind of have people shop basically directly from an email versus having them click and then going to a page and then clicking again. We'll kind of put some best products or most relevant products inside the email itself. This has been important for us as well. Kind of a text-based approach, where what we would do is in lieu of sending this nice creative, it's 100% text. And what would happen was we take the customer's name, we basically write out the offer that we would have in a creative base. We write out in text and present it just like this. What it ends up doing is a handful of things. One, it makes it really easy for the customer to understand. They're not trying to look at the creative and figure out what it is, what the offer is. They're reading it right there. We're personalizing it with their name. We have one link, so it's not a whole bunch of things to click on. When we do this, we typically concise it to 1 or 2, 3 at max different links from the click on, because we want to make it very, very easy. But what this looks like is it's coming directly from Johnny Cox, our Director of Customer Service. Really, for this campaign, I think we sent to around 500,000 people, and we just put the customer's name in there. But to the customer, it looks like, wow, Johnny really has my back. He's personalizing, he's writing about this offer. And a lot of times when we do this, we'll query our database and just get people that are in certain buckets. So for instance, if I mentioned earlier about high ticket items, low ticket items, and medium ticket items, as far as bucketing those, what if you have a medium ticket item and you let off this email with, Brad, I notice you typically like buying these things or this range. We have a special offer that just hit our website in this range that you typically shop in. Click here to buy. So I mean, it feels awesome to the customer, because it feels like, wow, this message is really built for me, and it's easy to understand. And to boot, it's fantastic from a deliverability standpoint. ISPs love messages like this because it feels like a text-based message. They'd be crazy to put this into a spam filter because it feels like I'm actually emailing the customer about something. And so these typically have a very, very good deliverability rate with their email marketing sends. So if you are having problems with gaining traction with some of your creative-based messages, try a text-based message, and that may work out for you more better, and maybe you send more of those. It doesn't really matter as long as you're leveraging your email marketing database with what they want to see in the right time, the right frequency, and the right relevancy. So I mentioned earlier about some different email marketing tools that could be very helpful for you. So these are 3 tools that I think really help with kind of previewing your email before it goes out to your customers. Both Litmus and Preview My Email, they're both services where you can throw your HTML code into their services and kind of hit like a preview button, and it'll show you what it looks like on a mobile device. It'll show you what it might look like in Outlook. It'll show you what it might look like in Gmail's native interface. It will look at the email subject line and say this appears too long. There's a high % chance that it might end up in a spam box. So it's basically a check kind of before it goes out to your customers. Just because it looks good on your email Outlook or your email provider when you hit send doesn't mean that it's going to look good on everybody's. And this kind of gives you a wide range of checks and balances to say, yeah, this looks good. You might throw it in and say, oh, wow, I have this errant piece of code. It didn't show up in my Outlook, but it's showing up for everybody else, and it's breaking my email. And it's misformatting, and then that does not look good, and then it's easy for a customer to unsubscribe in that regard. So those 2 I would recommend as kind of previews prior to hitting send. Mailgun is an interesting service. They actually they're an email validation service, and what I mean by that is you can actually upload your email database to their service, and they'll do checks against that database, and they'll make recommendations like, hey, this email has a very high risk because of X reason. This email has a medium risk, so you may want to send to them a little less. And here are all the low risk guys. Or did you mean this? So for instance, you run a sweepstakes, somebody puts their email address in and they say gmail.com, C-O-N instead of C-O-M. Obviously that's a typo. But if you wouldn't check that, you have thousands of email addresses. You're not going to be digging through your email database. That could go unnoticed, and that could be a very high value email for you, but it's never hitting their inbox because every time you hit send, it's undelivered because they had a typo. So this service will kind of show you different suggestions as to, hey, did you mean .com? And not all of them are the suggestions, or based on my experience, are ones that you definitely want to make. But they're there, they identify them. You can kind of judge them based on a case-by-case basis. But I use this service quite a lot as we get new email blocks. So for instance, as I get a run of sweepstakes, the sweepstakes is over with, and I want to import those emails into my database. Before I even import a bad email address, I run it through this service so that it never even hits my email database. So it's a new service that we've used, we've been very happy with, and it's relatively inexpensive considering the damage you can do by sending to incorrect email addresses. The last thing we want to talk about is just the different email marketing tools that are out there. You guys may be using these already. Constant Contact, MailChimp, iContact, and Sendinblue. Those are 4 of the major guys that are out there. There's a ton of them out there, and if you're comfortable using one or the other, they're all pretty relevant. They do have different pricing models that may fit businesses better than others. For instance, some might price based on how many emails you have in your database. Some might price based on how many emails you send. So I would just advise you, if you haven't had a relationship with an email marketing provider, to just kind of shop around, figure out the best provider for you. But they're all going to be pretty close. They're all going to provide user-friendly interfaces. They're all going to provide preview functions. They're all going to provide metrics for you to be able to monitor and track your performance. But the big takeaways I would say from this presentation would definitely be to really test as much as you can. Every single time you hit send, look at those metrics, see what worked, see what didn't work, and then make improvements with each and every sync. So that's it. Dustin, if you have any questions or any of your customers have questions, I'll be happy to answer them at a future time.
Thank you so much, Brad. This is fantastic information. And I know that, for those of you who are currently watching this video, it was a lot of information to take in. I definitely encourage you to go and test pieces of what Brad had to say at a time. Don't try and implement all of it at once, because you want to make sure, just like he reiterated multiple times, that you constantly test things. And it's a lot easier, I find, whenever you're doing things a little bit at a time. And I think that goes very well for a lot of the other content that you'll see in this video series. Is if it seems like a lot to take on at once, the best idea is to take a little bit at a time. You always have these videos to come back and reference for whenever you're ready to move on to the next step. But fantastic information. Thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate it. I have no doubt that we'll have you on again once we get more questions based on this current video. And so for everyone out there that's watching right now, if you have any questions on any topics, even if they're not relevant to email marketing, anything related to starting up a company or currently running a business that you have now, please feel free to email us at hello@opportunitymachine.org with any questions, and we'll make sure to get them answered by subject matter experts as soon as possible. This has been Click to Startup by the Opportunity Machine. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.